Hi, I'm Justin Lokitz, and this is the Design Shift Podcast, your weekly design guide packed with actionable insights, expert interviews, and bold ideas to help designers at every level lead with clarity, influence change, and shape what's next. In this episode, I sit down with Sid Vanchinathan, a founding partner of Design Squads and Hybrids, and a multi-talented, systems-minded designer and builder at that. Sid has spent years helping organizations design digital products, scale distributed teams, and navigate transformation without losing their human core. We talk about how AI is shaping product creation, how nearshoring is redefining global collaboration, and why the real work of design still comes down to helping people adapt, learn, and thrive through change. Sid also shares how HiOS, Hybrid's own vibe-coded hybrid operating system, keeps their cross-continental design teams moving in sync. Keep listening to hear how Sid blends technology, creativity, and culture to build tomorrow's organizations today. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to the Design Shift podcast and newsletter. Thanks. All right. Well, here we are again, everyone. And just as always, I am truly thrilled to be talking with someone who I consider a friend and a longtime collaborator. This is Sid Vanchinathan. He's a designer, a strategist, and a builder who truly embodies building tomorrow today. And that's also his tagline. Sid is the founding partner of Design Squads and Hybrids, where he helps organizations design and prototype, launch, and all kinds of digital products that blend business rigor with human-centered creativity. And of course, who's been designing for a long time, I consider him one of the ultimate human-centered creatives, certainly that I've been around.
Wow.
He's also known for being analytical and imaginative. And Sid brings sort of a really a no-nonsense iterative approach that turns ideas into impact for him and all of his clients and the studios that he runs. So welcome, Sid. I'm super excited to have you here.
Thanks, Justin. That was such a nice intro. I feel very flattered there.
Well, I mean, I like you, and we've hung out, and yeah, and all that stuff's true.
Yeah, I love
So,
our conversation. So really looking forward to this one.
yeah, cool. Me too. So, well, we'll just start at the very top. You have built a reputation as someone who, and I said this before, who seamlessly connects strategy and design. And I think a lot of people look at that and say, that's super interesting because I'm a creative or I'm a strategist and I leave the creative to creatives. But you really have seamlessly done both of these and done it quite well. How did that blend come about? Where did that come from in the first place?
Yeah, I'll throw in a third one there as well, which is
Yeah.
engineering.
Yeah.
Which I think it really comes from how I grew up in this world.
Hmm.
I was raised to be very academically technical. Let's say I
Hmm.
grew up in India, so there's only, at least when I was growing up, there's only two or three favorable career
Yeah.
options.
Yeah, sure.
You were either a doctor, engineer, or a lawyer, or nothing else was,
Uh-huh.
of any value in society.
Yep.
I'm exaggerating, but things have changed significantly since then. But so I was raised to be very technical. Used a computer for the first time, I think, when I was 5, and had
Mm.
computers growing up pretty early on. And that's actually where I was introduced into design. I picked up one of those PC Quest CD-ROMs that would bring all these software demos. And one of them was the suite of Adobe tools. And that's where I got into design, was just by, playing around with these softwares. And I think this was back in high school. I remember having so much fun and enjoying the whole process. And it was the
Yeah.
early days of the internet as well, and people were just getting started with these types of tools. And then when I came out of undergrad, I graduated in engineering. I realized very quickly that engineering is only one part of the equation. I was working at a large enterprise, and I found myself to be the only engineer on the team that was actually thinking from a sort of design and creative perspective. And
Huh.
it felt weird to me that, there's a company that is full of engineers and nobody's actually thinking about, creating products from a more of a human-centric lens. And I didn't have the words for it at the time.
Yeah,
But I
yeah,
realized that, design was the thing that I really wanted to do, and that was the thing that was really exciting for me to apply sort of my skill set and my mindset.
hmm
And then the third piece there was strategy and business, and I have learned all of my business and strategy skills through my journey of entrepreneurship,
yeah,
and realizing when you build something, you make something that doesn't make money, and realizing what you needed to do differently or how you would do that over again. And that's really just, I think, based on all of those collective experiences over the many years that I've been practicing this sort of intersection of design, engineering, and strategy is really where that blend came about.
yeah. Okay. So there's the forcing function of, in some ways, of noticing that it's not there, but in other ways, doing it and either
Yeah,
failing or not doing it well enough.
making a
It's
lot of
not sustainable.
mistakes.
Making a lot of
Yeah,
just, yeah, you've learned to become all of those things, right? And
yeah,
it sounds like it started with engineer, which is really interesting. I haven't met many engineers that have become necessarily designers and strategists. A few, funny enough,
yeah,
actually,
like yourself.
a few from India. Um,
Yeah,
but maybe that was the forcing function as well, the forcing it into the engineer. And it's like, well, I actually don't fit into this box nearly as well as other
yeah.
boxes. Yeah, super interesting.
I had this deal with my mom that I was actually going to go. I would have loved to go to architecture school. That's what I really
Yeah,
wanted to do.
yeah,
And I had this deal with my mom who told me that, do engineering, do that
uh-huh.
as a baseline, you have a backup, and then you can
Yeah,
do whatever you want.
yeah.
So I was like, great, I'll do that. And then when I finished and I was like, I want to go full time into design, I was like, Mom, I'm calling that card.
Oh, good. Yeah, I mean, you have the backup, so there you
Yeah,
go.
no, they were great. Yeah.
I said this in the intro too. You have this tagline for yourself, building tomorrow today.
Yep.
What does that mean in practice on a day-to-day basis in these firms that you run or in your personal life even?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there is building tomorrow today is really the idea of bridging what is possible in the
Hmm
future with what needs to happen today, right? And I think each of those words we chose that very carefully. For me, building is it's not just about envisioning or designing; it's about actually building. It's about
Yeah,
making it real. Because the gap between anybody that has a creative idea or a strategy that's in place to actually realizing it and bringing it to life, there's a whole lot of work that
yeah,
involves building, creating, failing, testing, learning, all of those things. So building seem to capture that. Tomorrow is, about making things future proof, but
Mhm.
not tomorrow as in 10 years from now, which is science fiction, or even 5 years from now. It's what can we do for the immediate future that can really
Right,
move the needle, but do it
right,
today,
right.
which is starting with impact in the shortest term.
Yeah, it's really cool to hear you say that, and actually even cooler that it's just these three little words with a comma in between them. Um, Now I'm hearing you say that I've seen that in practice. In fact, the first time I think I visited you at the Propellant Studios, and there were industrial designers and people making things, and now you're
Mhm.
saying this back to me. It's like, ooh, yeah, this has been you've been living
Yeah.
this, and maybe you didn't have those words before. I'm not sure, but certainly
Oh,
now
right.
I've seen you live this. It's like, okay, that does that is the epitome of Sid in my mind for sure.
Yeah, it's sort of it's I think it makes sense in retrospect, but
Yeah.
when you're in it, it's hard to tell that, these are the components of things
Yeah.
that you're actually doing and what's different. Because I used to see the projects that were, the 5 year out, 10 year out, future vision,
Yeah.
super cool design concepts, and they were so
Yeah.
inspiring and so great to see. But, you would see them in a video format or you would see them in a presentation, and that's
Sure.
the extent of how, the impact that they made. And I think maybe the thing for me was always about the impact. And you can't
hmm
make impact if you're not building things that can actually go out into the market, get tested,
Yeah.
and in the hands of real people. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. Here you know well that I've been teaching, for now quite a while at California College of the Arts. and specifically in this design MBA program. And we're always labeled for good reason as a maker's program,
Hmm.
certainly by other programs out there. And, because we agree. Like, how can you go at something with theory or even post-its, right? How do you go
Yeah.
at these things with something that really isn't real. You can have a lot of words and you can have a lot of talk, but and you could even have canvases and things like that that sort of give you an idea, give that idea some breadth and
Mhm.
depth and maybe a story arc. But so what? Okay, make it, right? Make this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't get me wrong, those are all of those things are important tools in the process
Yeah.
of, envisioning strategy, creative design, um, in order to shape the thing that you're actually going to
Yeah.
make.
Yeah.
And you have to have a component of making there,
Right.
without
Right.
which you don't really learn. I think for me, that's the key thing is, um, what's your shortcut to the learning
Yeah.
is through making, right? And through putting it out there in the world. So
Yeah. Well, let's talk more about making here. You've now
yeah,
made a few different studios. Right now, you have two different companies, I think. It's
yeah,
Design Squads and also Hybrids.
yeah.
Maybe give us a little description of what these are and how they differ from other design agencies out there, consultancies, and how you partner with clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Hybrids is really the main, let's say, the brand or the main
Hmm.
company that I've been building now over the last 13 years, formerly Propeller, and now Hybrids.
Yeah.
And it's really it's sort of a representation of what we were discussing a little bit earlier in terms of that perfect intersection between all of these different disciplines. In
Hmm.
my case, engineering, strategy, and design. In the case of hybrids, it's broadening that spectrum to include data science, to include
Okay.
communication, marketing, and so on, with the central thesis that if you put people with different backgrounds and different skill sets together on a project or a problem,
Mhm.
you're able to de-risk the output of what comes out of that, and
Yeah.
therefore it provides a better solution for the client.
Yeah.
And that's hybrids. And as we build hybrids, one of the challenges that we have is that we're so broad in what we are able to cover,
Hmm.
in terms of the functions that we touch within large enterprises, or the types of projects or the types of services that we do. So it was time to sort of split off design squads and use it, or make it its own entity, really to bring the nearshoring design teams aspect to the market. So it's sort of like a sub brand, if you want to think of it that way.
Got it.
It's under the hybrids umbrella, but it's got its very clear value proposition to go to market. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. So that's the nearshoring part, really,
Yes.
of hybrids in many respects. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. We're going to touch on the nearshoring here in a little bit. I've got a bunch of things I want to ask even before that. But before we move on, here we are talking about, well, certainly engineering and strategy, but then design. And design comes up every time. And it's certainly central to, well, design squads and
Yeah.
hybrids and most of what you do. Something I try to ask everyone if I can remember it. What does design mean to you? Or another way of saying it is, what is design?
So design, I think for me, the simplest way to think about design is the use of creative tools in the creation of something different or something innovative or something that
Mm.
hasn't existed. And I think for me, design is the best word that represents all of those elements.
Yeah.
It's connecting the dots where, dots were not connected. It's bringing something into existence that didn't exist before.
Mm.
And maybe the reason it didn't exist before is because it wasn't possible, and that's where the technology piece comes in. And the reason for it to exist, there must be a problem that it is solving. It's not just,
Right.
on the other side of the spectrum, a one-off, or, piece of art that maybe
Yeah.
lives, just for the reason of just being there or just existing, right? The
Right.
ability for it to actually solve a problem, and bring a solution to the table.
Got it. It makes total sense. It reminds me of there's a few. interesting, cool Charles Eames quotes out there that are kind of in the same realm. One of them's something like, we don't make art, right? We solve problems,
Yeah,
and right, and art is great, and art is beautiful on its own and thought provocative, all those things, right? And it, brings us in perhaps to ask questions about solving problems.
right.
But I agree, like design is there to solve problems and then to create something to solve said problem. And there's no end to the problems you can solve in many regards with this idea of design.
Yeah, and I guess one other difference between art and design is the for design or something to be designed, it needs to have considered or consider multiple users of some kind. Like it has
Yeah.
to work in the hands of many people,
Ah,
versus something more exclusive, right? Which is art. You need to go into a museum or you need to own an ex very expensive piece of art to actually experience it.
right.
Versus design is something that, by definition, I guess, needs to be in many people's hands.
Right, right. Yeah, you're evaluating how it might scale, how it might
Yeah,
solve a bunch of people's problems. Yeah. Well, I think this is a good segue into something, we were sitting down at lunch, brunch, something like that
yeah,
a few months ago up in Marin. And, we were talking about AI, and you told me this story about, here you are at Hybrids, and, you were looking into new systems and CRM and operations and all these other things. And basically, you're like, these are all super bloated. You have to make something out of them anyways, right? You pick up anything off the shelf, Salesforce or anything. And I'm not going after Salesforce, although we could. But you could pick any of these things up off the shelf, and eventually you just have to create the thing you want out of it anyways. So instead of doing that, you went for something quite different, which is you picked up Replit and from scratch, you no coded or low coded an entire, what I think you're calling HiOS, like hybrid OS for your organization. Is that right? Can you
yeah,
replay that for me, how that went? Like here you are creating
yeah.
something. How did that go?
Yeah, absolutely. It was so growing and scaling a consulting firm.
Yeah,
One of the many challenges you will face along the way is how you manage the business from a software perspective. At a certain point, you have to go beyond Google Docs and, Excel and
yeah,
the
yeah.
tools that allow you to actually go beyond and scale the business. And then the only thing that's available in the market for companies at that scale are, out of the box SaaS solutions, right? If
Hmm.
you are looking for a project management tool, there's a whole suite of those out
Yeah,
there. If you're
yeah.
looking for something to track time of your employees, there's a whole suite of tools out there. Same thing for sales or same thing for accounting and so on. And for many years, we never found the perfect solution because, the perfect solution doesn't exist.
Sure.
It's every company is different, every business has different needs. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to find the best tool that maximizes the
Mm.
list of or hits the most checkpoints of what you need and what the tool offers. And by the way, it's not just one tool, it's like,
Yeah,
five different tools.
yeah,
None of them talk to each other, and you're, marking a project as one on your pipeline and then creating the project again on your project management tool and then
yeah.
taking information from one place to another and making mistakes and human errors all over the place, inefficiency. So last Christmas or during the holidays is when I first discovered Replit. And Replit, for
Hmm.
those who are not familiar, is a what is now called a vibe coding tool. It's basically an AI coding assistant. It,
Yep.
lets
Yeah.
you prompt your way into building products. So it was the first time I had interacted with a tool like that, and it was, the holidays, and I was like, oh, let's play around, let's see what's
Hmm.
possible. And then one thing led to the other, and I was like, wait, let me try to see if we can actually build a simple time tracker with Replit, and maybe we don't have
Hmm.
to, we can replace what we're currently using with a tool that we've, built ourselves. And then voila, in pretty much less than a day, I had a fully functional time tracking tool. And I was like, wait, this was crazy that I was able to do this so quickly and it
Yeah.
works and it's all connected. There's databases, there's front end, there's back end. And by the way, it looks nice and the interface is pleasant and it's easy to
Yeah.
use. So I was like, oh, what if we try to add in our CRM here? And CRMs are, a lot more complicated than a time tracking tool. You need a pipeline, you need deals, you need the ability to move from one stage to the next.
Hmm.
And a couple of days later, we had a CRM fully functional just next to the time tracking tool. It's like, okay, this is crazy. And long story short, 6 months into this Replit homegrown tool that we have, it touches and connects various parts of our business. So we're running our entire business on a completely AI generated, AI coded product that
It's
had
wild.
me, and now I have an intern that is helping me with it
Yeah.
as well. But it touches, everything from sales to estimations to time
Hmm.
tracking to project management to, sending reports to various people in the team, connecting it with accounting. So it's like our own ERP
Yeah.
system that we've,
Yeah.
really homegrown. But it's insane. Like, a year ago, I was out in the market looking for tools. Like I was willing to pay, a lot of money for
Yeah.
ERP systems that, I know the bills only keep increasing when you implement one of those. So yeah, it was a wild experience, and I've been having a lot of fun working with Replit and actually
Yeah.
creating this tool internally as well.
Well, I mean, I could see that also. I mean, here we started with this idea of making things and creating things. And,
Yeah,
I like the idea that also, by the way, this is an assistant. Yes, it makes things for you. And, I'm going to make some assumptions here that you're also, it's not just prompts. Like you're helping it along. You're going back and forth, in many respects.
yeah.
Is that right?
It's not as simple as just, prompting it to say, I want a time tracking tool, and
Yeah.
then,
Yeah.
out pops a time tracking tool. I think it helps that I have an engineering background and I have a
Okay.
design background and I understand the business. So I think those pieces enable me to be
Yeah.
uniquely placed to, create this with the help of Replit. But it's not all smooth sailing. There's moments where, I'm banging my head against the wall trying to figure out a bug that, I'm prompting my way through. The bug still exists, and
Yeah.
the tool is like, yep, but I fixed it. And I'm like, nope,
No,
you
you
haven't
haven't.
fixed it. It's
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
there. But then you have to be able to look under the hood and, like,
Yeah.
debug your way through it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think I checked probably a couple of months ago that the number of lines of code that it had generated was in the, I don't know, 60, 70,000.
Wow.
And I'm sure it's well past 100K lines of code at this point.
Huh.
I will make a note to check.
All right. How, you've made HiOS for you. How has this experience changed how you help other organizations than your clients design and ship products today?
Yeah, I think I would say there's a little bit of a gap in the market that currently
Mm,
exists. I think what I'm seeing, because we are in this case for iOS, we are our own users and we are our own customers, so we have full control over
yeah.
how we go about building this. And it's a lot more flexible and it's a lot more adaptable, and things can break, and there is space to fail because it's our
It's
tool and
it's
our
yours.
business.
Yeah.
It's for ourselves. So I think that's where the gap really exists, is the amount of
Mhm.
risk that companies are willing to take. I think what I'm seeing firsthand experiencing these tools is
Hmm.
that the typical process of how you went about building and creating a digital product before and how you do typically today is I think ripe for change.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even 3 or 4 years ago, we were doing projects where you would start with a research phase, go deep, do a deep, customer analysis, understand needs, create a bunch of requirements or journeys that, the tool
Hmm.
needed to deliver against. Then
Hmm.
you would bring a design team in, design all the screens, design all the flows, go through a couple of rounds of iteration, make sure that it's actually viable to build, and then you would hand it off to the engineering team.
Right.
Agile came and changed all that, where now you have these teams working in sprints, but still working in specialized disciplines. You still have the designers, you still have the engineers, you still have the
Yeah.
product managers. But what I'm seeing is that all of those roles can be collapsed into one, right?
Uh,
And I think it might take some time for that to actually happen. And
yeah.
maybe the transition to that is, which we're already seeing, is, designers that are, or engineers that are now able to take on some design
Hmm.
um, functions, or designers that are able to take on some more technical product management type of functions, and
Hmm.
product managers that may have come from a technical background, they're able to take on more of that technical aspect. So maybe there's like a world where two of these roles start, merging, and then eventually each of
Yeah.
those merge into one. In terms of what we're doing with clients is, I would say, pieces of the process
Okay.
are being brought to life in projects, because I think there is that it's the amount of risk. So people are not willing to take the risk yet to say, okay, we'll just have this entire thing, AI generated and AI coded, and what about security, and what about, enterprise readiness, and what about. So
Hmm.
we're still trying to, maintain the process of how, or what clients are willing to, absorb in terms of the
Yeah.
risk.
Yeah.
Each of those people are fully augmented with these AI tools. So things are moving much faster. I think at the end of the day, that's really what it comes down to, is we're building things a lot faster, designing things a lot faster than what we used to before.
It is, yeah. So it sounds like you're doing some of this for clients now, and and what about comes up.
Yeah.
Is there a specific project, even without naming the client, that you can share where some of these tools, Replit or something else, has enabled you to do something today where, yeah, maybe again, like the designer now can do something today that yesterday was barely possible or maybe not possible at all. Like, yeah, with traditional methods, basically. Is there one project you
Yeah.
can talk about in that way?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a project and a long-term relationship that we have with this client, and
Hmm.
there's a particular tool that they use in, it's a retail business, it's in fashion and apparel.
Mm,
Uh, and one of the tools that they use is for managing compliance. So, what do the actual stores look like, or what do the displays look like versus what, the design or the toolkit was supposed to be. And this could be, in supermarkets or in
yeah.
retail stores, or any of that. And currently the process is, or there are tools out there that allow people to take pictures of these, the real stores, and then send it back. And there's a human that reviews it and gives feedback. And so that's
Mm,
like the traditional process of how these work.
hmm.
Um, Even just to start the conversation about, hey, what if we created a specific tool to solve this with AI, or to speed up this process with AI, we were actually able to go to the table with a fully built prototype,
Mm,
instead of just a proposal or just ideas on a page, right?
yeah.
And that would, even 5 or 6 months ago, people were not doing that, or it wasn't even possible to do that. But
Right.
you spend a week in tools like Replit, take your idea, bring it into some level of prototype that shows that, hey, this is actually feasible and possible, and then you build it up from there. And it
Yeah.
really enables the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. I think yeah, I think that is sort of fundamental to, that's a fundamental shift that we're seeing. So much so that, to your point, where, we're now taking these roles that may have been traditional before and throwing things over the wall to each other.
Mhm.
Yeah, we're collapsing those. In fact, my friend Nick Cawthon, who also runs a small design agency, said the same thing. He brought something in. He was hired by someone to do similar work to, I think, what you do. And instead of delivering the Figma spec, which is what he would have normally done, he brought in he was using Cursor basically. So, Replit's
Yeah.
competitor, but basically did the same thing you're doing, which is no, 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 we're not throwing Figma stuff over the wall to engineering anymore. We're going to deliver the product, really the prototype product to engineering, and now they can, do all the plumbing, but we can get there much faster by agreeing like this is the direction. And it sounds like, yeah, you're using
Yeah.
it in a similar respect with prototypes, perhaps.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we're trying to get our designers to use more and more is tools like Replit as a replacement for design tools.
Yeah, okay.
So, you design within Replit, you
Hmm.
can plug in your Figma design system
Yeah,
library into it. And all you're doing is assembling pages based on, the specific requirements or the specific flows that you're trying to enable.
right.
And when your job is not necessarily creating elements from scratch, you're not like shaping the exact button. The button's already in the design library. All you need
Yeah,
to do is, assemble a page together. You can do that a lot faster. And then, by the way, you just hit a play button and it's fully functional from a
it's
front
crazy.
end perspective. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's wild.
Well, well, here you are then. You're also, you're hiring and bringing on, and you have done so for a long time, all kinds of designers and product people. What are some of those skills then that designers, I'd think of designers and product managers, for instance. What are those skills that they are going to have to start developing to stay relevant in this world? Maybe even so relevant that you will bring them onto a project or hire them because of that relevance. And, what do they need? And vice versa, like what's traditional skills,
Yeah,
still hold value in there, specifically when it comes to design or product.
yeah, for sure. I think there's three types of designers out there today, right? There's
Hmm.
the designers that are have a lot of legacy in how they have been doing things and how they have been working over
Yeah.
many years in their career, and they have a hesitation in adopting these new ways of working or these new tools.
Hmm.
They're the most senior and bring the most knowledge and expertise. Then you have the ones in the middle that are starting to experiment or already experimenting with AI tools
Hmm.
in their day-to-day workflows, and they're trying to figure it out because I think that's the beauty of this latest technological revolution is that all of us are experimenting at the same exact time,
Yeah.
and all of us are learning at the same exact time. And then you have the people that are enamored by all the hype, right? There's a lot of hype out there. There's a lot of, a lot of influencers, you know, uh, shaping their point of views and, calling out the next best tool and, that it, but that's it. It's just stays at a surface level there. So I think what we try to look for is people that show the ability to actually experiment, and
Yeah.
that they have experimented and that they have learned something new and that they have been able to demonstrate significantly improving their work based on, these experiments that they have been doing.
Hmm.
And we definitely prefer to bring those kind of people on more than, people that are just about the next best tool, or of course the people that are not willing to experiment. I think some of the critical traditional skills, or I would say critical skills that are still relevant.
Yeah.
I think critical thinking for sure, which is about, how do you ask the right questions? Like, what is really the right thing to ask, or what is the right thing to do here?
Yeah.
And understanding, what is the gap versus what you want to be or where you want to be. The ability to learn is another one. I think that's a very important one, a growth mindset, the
Yeah.
curiosity and the hunger to experiment, to learn, to develop. And the ability to learn is something that I don't think, I mean, a lot of designers do have that, but we definitely look for that because who knows what the world is going to look like in 6 months, 12 months down the line. And the third one is a combination of taste and intuition.
Mm.
um, Taste for, understanding and knowing what is good or what good looks like. And
Yeah.
intuition is a play on words on what good looks like. It's how good works like is for me intuition, right? Um, so I think it comes down to to those, as long as and we know the tools are going to keep changing and evolving. So as long as people are able to learn and adapt,
Yeah.
but knowing what good looks like and how good works like is, I think, something that will still be a human skill set,
Yeah.
hopefully.
Couldn't agree more. And I love that definition, both those definitions of taste and intuition. It feels like now when I hear them that you can't pull them apart. You really
Yeah.
you need both. Yeah. Yeah. Um, I want to shift now a little bit into this idea of nearshoring. So here, yes, you are,
Yeah.
you're hiring certainly in propellant in hybrids, right? You read propellant previously. You're hiring in hybrids and you certainly have a team, but also, you mentioned before that now you have a sub brand with design squads. For listeners who aren't familiar with this term, what is this idea? And Design Squads is perfect for this. What does nearshoring mean in this design context? How do you use nearshoring? What is it?
Yeah, nearshoring is so maybe just to back up a little bit,
Yeah,
I think over the last 20, 25 years, we've seen this huge trend towards offshoring, right?
yeah,
Offshoring was
yeah.
or outsourcing, offshoring. Basically, how you could understand it is that you would have remote teams, so
Hmm.
functions or capabilities that were previously in-house, offshored or outsourced
Yeah.
because they're not necessarily core capabilities. And by the way, there's a cost advantage to doing that.
Hmm.
Design was never a part of that function because of the importance of design within the creation of the product or whatever it is that might where design is involved.
Mm.
But I think also in the last 10 years or so, we've seen a huge trend towards insourcing design into every single organization
Yeah.
within corporate America, right? Of course, led by tech and sort of the need or the the need created by companies like Apple and
Hmm.
Airbnb and
Yeah.
all these stories where design is leading the way. Um, but every single company up and down the, let's say Fortune 500 list, adopting that as a
Yep.
strategic differentiator that they needed to build, even if it wasn't their core competency. Like I could argue that for Apple and for Airbnb, design is a core capability. It's
Hmm.
fundamental to that business being
Hmm.
differentiated in the market and actually having the market there.
Hmm.
But if you take a bank and there's, I don't know, 300 plus banks in the
Mm.
US, right?
Yeah.
Um, how many of those banks is design really the core competency for? And a
Yeah.
lot of these banks have actually gone about building design teams internally because, at the end of the day, these banks are, owning customer experiences and launching apps
Sure.
and websites and all of
Sure.
that.
Sure.
But banks fundamentally are their core competency is managing risk and managing money, right?
Yeah.
And design is this thing that was cool in the last 10 years, but um, I think what a lot of, and I talk about banks because I think it's a good example, is they're realizing that design is not necessarily not a core capability, but what has happened is having design teams at banks, designers end up becoming bankers.
Oh,
Because if you're a super creative designer, you've worked at a bank for 15 years, you're the one saying no to new ideas because you've been beaten down by the legal and the regulatory people
yes.
all
Yes.
of your years. And I think that's one of the dynamics in the US market that's actually shaping an opportunity for this nearshoring. So just going back to your question, it's offshoring, but nearshore.
Yeah.
Offshoring, what that did was, a lot of these jobs went off to, or a lot of these functions went off to Asia and,
Hmm.
time zones that were pretty much halfway around the world. So it was daytime for them when it was nighttime for you. So nearshoring is basically remote teams within the time zone of the US.
Hmm.
So you can still continue to maintain one set of routines, one set of processes. It's still one team that you can actually create versus having, pretty much two separate teams. It's like your local team and then your offshore team. And
Right.
here you are as a design leader waking up for calls at, 7 a.m. or
Yeah.
6 a.m. with India or, ending your day at 10 or 11 p.m. So
Yeah.
It's really bringing that same value proposition, but with a sort of time zone alignment to the US.
Yeah, makes total sense. When you think about then, what you're doing with nearshoring, what are some of the biggest challenges then to nearshoring, especially, yeah, I don't know if it's banks but really any other corporate client. What are some of those challenges that you face, even in nearshoring, even if we're getting rid of some of the challenges that we faced with offshoring in Asia, for instance?
Absolutely. It's not a simple plug and play
Hmm.
process. I think the value proposition is clear. You have great quality design talent in our case in Latin America,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
is time zone aligned to the US. And there's amazing design schools, amazing design programs,
yeah.
amazing pipelines of talent that exist there. So quality is a check.
Mm-hmm.
Cost of living is significantly lower than the US. So there is still a cost advantage to hiring people near shore. Um, and then there's a sort of chip on the shoulder thing, which I'll get to in just a second. But getting to the so hiring is not easy. If you look at the entire sort of process, it's hiring, onboarding, retaining, all of
Yeah,
that.
sure,
Hiring
sure.
is challenging because if you're, a company based in the US or if you're an HR team based in the US, you know how to hire within the US.
Yep.
Hiring, in other countries, working with local regulations, laws, even cultural differences and nuances of,
Mm-hmm.
what communication looks like. How do you what do you actually interview for? It's hard work to identify good talent. And
Yeah,
there's a ton of agencies out there,
yeah.
especially staffing and recruiting agencies that are able to, at least solve some of that hiring process, but they don't know how to look for good design talent. They're not looking at portfolios and being able to differentiate between, one versus the other because they're, hiring for executive admins to growth marketers to designers and everybody else in between, right? Um, so that's the reason we decided to build a business around this, really is
Yeah.
taking all of the knowledge that we have on how we bring in or how we hire and retain good design talent,
Hmm.
and applying the nearshoring lens to it. So, we'll take care of the hiring piece for on behalf of our clients and set up that team.
Mm.
That's not that's one of the challenges solved. Another one of them is onboarding, which there's a change management component to that because typically what happens is you have a team with, let's say, a certain layer of managers in the US that are now being
Yeah.
asked to work with a fully remote team versus maybe what they had previously. So it's a typical change management problem. There's resistance to change. There's
Hmm.
resistance to work in a new way. There's all these new colleagues that you're getting to know in a very short period of time and having to work on very quickly. So it's very important to involve a lot of those folks very early on in the process, so you're able to actually build the model with their input.
Yeah.
Involve them in the hiring process as well, so they are actually able to interview candidates and make sure that the level of quality that we're bringing to the table is what they would want in their teams.
Hmm.
And the third piece is the cultural training. I think it's important that people recognize that yes, you have nearshore teams, you get this great value proposition, but they do come from a different culture. And for me, that's the
Mm.
simplest way of differentiating, having worked in the US with, fully US based sort of work culture and with the Latin American group of people and how they relate and how they work. Really, the biggest difference is in American culture or American work culture, the work comes first and then
Yeah.
relationships. And in
Yeah.
Latino work culture, it's the relationships that come first and then, it's the work. So it's a small shift, but the way you build trust in, it's very different. So there is cultural change management on both sides that needs to be done as well.
Uh-huh.
So what we've been finding is that we play a role in all of those three spaces. It's not just, us looking for great design talent and then,
Yeah.
here you go. It's how do we onboard them? How do we set them up for success? And how do we get those both sides to understand each other from a cultural perspective and really work well together.
That's great. I've never really heard of it that way, and especially the, sort of the Latin American, yeah, the relationship first and then the work. But it makes sense. I've worked with lots of Latinos and Latinas, and I have lots in my program too, and this
Yeah.
totally makes sense. How then, you now you're working with these organizations, and this is really change management, right? So this is change management not just for the individuals. This is change management for these organizations that you're working with. Um, how do you do that? How are you bringing them into this, and how do you bring the people into that, and maybe even more, like, where does design play a role in that change? Yeah, nearshoring or otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. I think design, so going back to the start, I think one of the things that for me design thinking represents is, I mean, I think we've gone past that wave.
Yeah.
But for me, what design thinking represented was really about creative thinking, was about divergence and convergence, and
Hmm.
the ability to prototype or make or design and build things, right?
Hmm.
I think typically change management has not taken into account, human centricity. Change management is always
Hmm.
about communications and training,
Yeah.
right? So if you think about a team that is going through this change, maybe there's a nearshoring team that is coming in. There's a lot of change that is happening, and by definition, humans are not great at change, right? We like to be in our comfort zone. We like
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
have familiarity. That's what we thrive in, and comfort is really what we create around us. Even when you start working at a new job, you're looking for that comfort zone. You're looking to create that.
Hmm.
Um, so I think having that design expertise and that human-centric background, it really allows us to come at the change management problem from a different angle and a different lens, which is really employee-centric. The same process that you would, think about for
Yeah.
consumers or
Yeah.
users. It's really thinking about the employees and thinking about the people that are receiving or are on the receiving end of this change. How do you empathize with them? How do you understand their needs? Okay, take that into account. What does their day-to-day actually look like? What does their user journey look like?
Mm.
And then how do you actually take all that information and design a program, um, the new program or the new tool or the new process, and really bring that into um, how they do things and help them evolve there. So storytelling, creative thinking, co-creation,
Yeah.
all of these elements are key to that process.
How do you measure success? You're using all these design tools, and now you're using them for EX, right? Employee
Yeah.
experience. In a similar sense, you mentioned to using them for CX, customer experience, but these are just internal customers. How do you measure success then when you're creating internal programmatic change?
Yeah, I think the usually the genesis of any of these programs are usually financially driven, right? So
Yeah.
typically
Yeah.
when there is a new process, a new tool, a new offshore team, onshore team, new nearshore team, there is some type of financial impact that is driving,
Hmm.
some of these changes. So it's typically, either a consulting firm that is working with the
Sure.
C-levels, coming down saying, hey, we need to make this change. That's usually the starting point for a lot of these. So it's not necessarily developed co-creatively with
Mm.
the employees, the idea for
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So it's just usually like, hey, we need to do this because it's XYZ better for the business, so we need to go about doing this. And typically that comes at the expense of the employee experience because, these are central teams or consulting
Yeah.
firms that are coming in, deploying,
Yeah.
large scale change without necessarily understanding the or empathizing with the end users. So what ends up happening is employees are dissatisfied, and they're leaving companies because the work environment and the employee experience that's being created for them is not necessarily conducive to maybe bringing the best out of them, versus a new company that is
Yeah.
doesn't have all of this legacy, that is offering a better place for working because they don't have that baggage, let's say.
Yeah.
So really what it comes down to is employee NPS, which is ENPS. Some of the change management work that we were brought into, that was actually the starting point, which is, hey, we're seeing in our exit interviews with employees that they're complaining about the rollout of new tools and new processes, and how they've been they haven't been managed well. So we're seeing our ENPS going down. So how do we bring in a more human-centric approach to change management, and then helping ENPS go up? So
Yeah.
that's one
Yeah.
metric that we use to measure, and the other one is the rate of adoption. So if it's an existing process or an existing tool that people are used to using for however long they've been using it, and there's a new process and a new tool,
Yeah.
and the change management process in the middle, how does the adoption actually improve? And how long does it take for people to actually adopt the new process or new tool?
Right. So it isn't, it sounds like it isn't all that much different than, here you create a website or an app or something like
Yeah,
that, and you're measuring number of clicks or, views to
absolutely.
clicks and things like that. Here you're
Active
measuring the internal.
users, NPS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes
Yeah,
makes
it's
total
it's
sense.
I think for me it's pretty much the same analogous process as how you would apply design thinking or these types of tools
Yeah.
to consumer experience. Like you
Yeah.
said it, CX, right? And
Yeah.
EX is just the E replacing the C, but the X part of how you go about it
Yeah.
is pretty much the same.
Uh, Um, there's, I'm gonna ask you a couple more questions here. I know wow, we're like almost an hour in, which is crazy, but this is how this goes. Um,
Yeah.
you know, a big part of design is this, is experimentation, right? Is prototyping, experimenting, and, whether that's prototyping and experimenting with products, services, right, interfaces, but perhaps also experimenting with nearshoring, working with other people, in other countries, even if they're in the same time zone. Yeah, you and I we've both been on the front lines and experienced time and time again that the leaders we're working with often they want to build this culture of experimentation, and at the same time they face inertia with experimenting, of all different kinds. What guidance do you give leaders then, about how to deal with this inertia and how to really build a culture of experimentation?
Yeah. I think it's really a leadership challenge,
Yeah,
because it comes from how you build your team and how you signal to that team what behaviors. This culture is a set of behaviors, and
yeah,
what behaviors you actually encourage and allow and reward in your organization, which drives the willingness or not willingness to embrace new things, whether it's experimentation or other
yeah,
things like nearshoring and so on. So I think really the first step is to build into the culture the need to be okay to be outside your comfort zone. And I
mm,
think you and I know this, like magic happens outside your comfort zone, growth
yep,
happens outside your comfort zone. The moment you feel, and then this is true for people like us, and I feel it, like when I feel like I'm in my comfort zone, I need to change something. Like
yeah,
something needs to.
yeah, yeah. Get bored.
Yeah,
Uh-huh,
I call it, yeah, you and I call it boredom, but it's for
uh-huh.
us, that's our mechanism for growth, right? But you need to really build that into your culture, to be okay with being outside your comfort zone, and then create routines, or leverage the routines that you already have,
Yeah,
to actually recognize people that are going outside their comfort zone, and do so in a way that recognizes not just the successes, but also the failures. It's like, oh, this person,
mm,
they are here to share a story today. And then when that person shares the story, it's about let's say them using a new AI tool in their design process and how it failed miserably. And that's equally
Right.
valuable. And it's not just the successes. So once you start doing that, you really give people the psychological safety area to, experiment and to try new things and to bring those to the table.
Hmm.
And your job as a leader is to remove all of the bureaucracy that is around the rest of that process. Like, a lot of my clients, um, the ones that we work with, they're not able to use the same types of tools internally that we're able to use. So
Uh,
sometimes like they're like, hey, can you tell me how this tool is or try that
yeah.
tool for me? Because,
Yeah.
it's going to take me 6 months for IT to, approve this for good reason and, and enterprise security and all of that.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of bureaucracy around allowing, for experimentation. So
Yeah.
I think it's a cultural shift. It's getting outside your comfort zone, recognizing successes and failures,
Yeah.
and then getting rid of as much of that bureaucracy as possible.
No, I couldn't agree more. In your now your experiments and you're running a nearshoring company, how often do you notice that nearshoring maybe encourages greater, a greater innovation, other ideas, right? All these things we're talking about with a culture of experimentation, right? And really
Yeah.
culture change. How often is nearshoring bringing some of those things to the table that perhaps weren't in that team when it was only hiring from the US?
Yeah. I think the same approach to why a multidisciplinary team is better than a monodisciplinary team, like,
Yeah.
a team of designers, engineers, researchers automatically will create a better solution just by putting them together than just a team of UX designers, let's say.
Hmm.
It's the same thing with cultures. Like if you have a multicultural team, there is also a certain level of innovation that gets unlocked by
Yeah.
people coming from different cultural backgrounds and sharing that different way of thinking or way of approaching a problem with whatever culture there is existing. So I think just by definition, multidisciplinary, multicultural, which is nearshoring, is in its own way will bring innovation.
Hmm.
On the other hand, also what I've noticed with a lot of the folks that I've been working with in Latin America is, and especially those that are part of these nearshoring teams and these and working in this way,
Hmm.
nearshoring is not a new idea. It's been around for a little while. Actually, there are some companies, like more mature companies, that they have offshore or nearshore development centers, and
Yeah.
in Latin
Yeah.
America, that's how just part of their operating model. Um, and people, and it is we've seen this firsthand, is that designers that are, let's say, in Bogota, Colombia, for them to work on a US based global brand like Converse, for example, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity for them,
Mm.
right? And they feel immense pride in working for these brands and working for these companies, and that brings in itself and they bring it as well, a desire to go above and beyond what is asked, and
Yeah.
to bring new things to the table again beyond what is asked and prove themselves. So there's a little bit of a hunger that exists, which I'm not sure if that you will get that much from just a monocultural team, but
Yeah.
I think that's definitely part of why you can actually improve your design output or the quality of the output, just having multicultural teams working
Yeah.
together.
It's fantastic. Well, I want to move to a quick lightning round, knowing that we're here. We're only got
Oh,
a few minutes left, and I've just got really, we'll call it four main questions, and they're all
okay.
relatively easy. So here, I've seen you all over online, and we've talked also about the LinkedIn algorithm and everything else that we're trying there. Um, you've even in LinkedIn sphere, you had this, you had a challenge, you were using one of the challenges, or maybe you submitted a challenge where you were building AI action figures, which sparked a bunch of excitement. What excites you most about kind of this newer intersection of play and design and technology like AI?
Yeah, I think what excites me most is that the barrier for creating new things, new product, new
Yeah.
tools, new technology has really gone down. And I think it democratizes a lot more the creation of, yeah, it's the creation of new digital products. And that's
Hmm.
very exciting because there's a lot more people that now have the ability to take a personal problem that they've had and in the past not had a way to solve it because they didn't have the tools or the skill sets to build a tool that solve that problem, and
Right.
are able to create tools that actually now are able to solve that problem. And by the way, if it solves a problem for themselves, it solves problems for others that have that same challenge as well. So I think that's for me the
Yeah.
most exciting thing. Another one is speed. I mean, it's insane how quickly these things are moving. So just staying abreast and keeping in touch with how fast everything is moving is exciting in its own.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a part of this, maybe part two of this question. You've got kids. What are you
Yeah.
seeing from them when it comes to some of these tools, if you're even allowing them to use some of these tools?
Yeah, I actually I got my son who's now 8
Uh-huh.
uh, to use Replit
Oh
once.
yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, let's try to create a game together. And he's really into Minecraft these days.
Hmm.
And it I don't think he fully understood what was happening there.
Mm.
He's 8. But I think, this whole generation is going to grow up with all of these tools natively, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
very excited for what is going to come out when, yeah, my son gets to,
Yeah.
15 and is in high school, and reminds me of when I was experimenting with Adobe Photoshop
Yeah.
demos.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, which is yeah, which the learning curve on Adobe Photoshop I think is yeah, quite significant compared to
Yeah.
some of these. Let's talk a little bit about design leadership then. What emerging trends are you tracking that will shape design leadership then in the next few years? Not just designers and creators, but us leaders of designers and creators and engineers and everyone else.
Yeah, I think what's probably going to shift the most is the first part of that design leadership. It's design.
Yeah.
I think leadership will continue to remain the same in terms of the full, meaning of
Mhm.
that word, but
Yeah.
what design means and what design leaders are asked to do in terms of what their teams are going to be doing
Mm.
today versus, even 6 months from now or 2 years from now is going to look very different. So I think the speed at which digital product is going to be created is going to create new challenges for design leaders. It's like, what are you going to do with all that excess capacity that you have? Let's say a
Yeah.
3-month project that now you were able to finish in 3 weeks. What do you do with all of that time? Do you spend it on building more stuff? But then are your users actually ready to be bombarded with all of these new features that you're throwing
Yeah.
out at them, or do you need to take it slower for their sake, or how do you think about capacity on your team? How many people you actually need on your team versus, the speed at which the business is moving? So there's a lot of these factors it's not just design leaders, it's engineering leaders, it's product leaders that are going through the same sort of questions.
Hmm.
But I really think like they're designers, engineers, product people, there's some intersection of that, which is a unified role. I don't know how long, 3 years, 2 years, 5 years. I don't
Mm.
know what it's going to be called.
Mm.
It's probably got something to do with vibe in its name. I don't know. But
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I think that is definitely something to keep an eye on.
Okay, yeah. Um, is there a book, a podcast, or a tool that you'd recommend to your listeners who want to go deeper into any of these topics?
So I would say, so a lot of where I get my input is actually this curated corner that I've created for myself on Twitter.
Oh yeah.
Because I'm at this in like on Twitter, I'm at like the kind of things that I look at are AI, design,
Mm.
business. Um, solopreneurship, marketing, and Formula One because I like Formula
Yeah, of
One.
course. Yeah, sure.
But so I think definitely leveraging places like LinkedIn and Twitter because I think the space is going so quickly
Hmm.
that if you want to stay somewhere in the loop, it's not yet written into a book, it's not yet, turned into
Yeah.
a podcast, and it's at that cutting edge. Um, the the other thing that I would recommend is experimenting and playing around with these tools on your own, right?
Yeah.
Like you've heard about Replit on this conversation, download it or create an, you don't have to download it, create an account, get some credits, try it out,
Yeah.
throw something into the prompt, create your own personal party planning tool or your personal
Yeah.
budgeting tool or something that, you will allow you to learn what these tools can actually do.
Yeah. Makes total sense. All right, Sid, final question. Uh, where can people learn more about the work you're doing at Design Squads and Hybrids, or follow, what you're doing next?
I try to keep my LinkedIn up to date.
Okay.
I try not to post too much, like you are, Justin. No, I'm just kidding.
No. Yeah.
I'm trying to post like once a week or twice a week at most. So you can keep in touch with me there. I also try to bookmark a lot of things on Twitter. So the interesting things that I
Ah,
find, I bookmark them. And I don't know if there's a way to actually look through my bookmarks if you're on Twitter, but maybe I need to pull those out and do like a 5 bookmarks of the week or something that I can start sharing on LinkedIn.
it's a great idea.
Uh,
Write it down. Yeah,
yeah,
I think
LinkedIn would be.
we can both do that. Yeah, we can both
Yeah,
do that.
why not?
Yeah, and I think just, as an aside to both of those, this idea of curating where you get the information. On one hand, like there's the filter bubble part of that, which is, these services will certainly curate for you if you let them.
Yeah,
On the other side, it sounds like, you've really curated what you're looking for, and you can stay away from the BS in some cases, perhaps better than others by just
go past
staying in
it.
your corner because you're learning something, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. I guess like the things that I heart and the things that I bookmark are actual signals to the algorithm. So,
Yeah.
or the things that I share. I found that if you share something to someone using the share whatever functionality,
Yeah.
the algorithm like over biases against that. It's like, oh, you actually shared that. So
Yeah.
that means that you really liked what that thing was. So let me show you a lot more of what that is. But so interesting to
Yeah.
see how these algorithms have taken over for our curation as well.
Indeed. Well, Sid, I truly appreciate you being here today. This was awesome,
Thank
and
you,
I look
Justin.
forward to breakfast or coffee with you again soon.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thanks for the great conversation. Thanks for the amazing questions. Always a pleasure to chat. And yeah, let's catch up soon.
Sounds good. See ya.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to Design Shift. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a quick rating or review. It really helps more designers like you find the show, and it helps me make better shows. And if you're not already subscribed to our awesome newsletter, head over to designshift.me. See you next time.